In an extremely dangerous urban area of London, residents face terrible security problems, as a kind of cultural wave of crime has taken shape over the years. In one of the apartments in that area, Tom plays on his computer to try to distract himself a little, and when he hears the macabre clashes happening outside, he decides to put on his headphones to isolate himself from it all. The next day, the young man walks through the streets of the neighborhood when he meets his friend Danny, who gives him the MP3 player he had asked for. Sometime later, Tom continues with his school day, but is completely distracted from his activities, as he is watching Lucy, a friend for whom he has strong romantic feelings. Later, at the end of class, Lucy approaches her friend to talk and asks for help with upcoming science classes. During the conversation, Eugene, one of the bullies, shows up and teases his classmate, saying that Tom can't even talk to a girl like a normal person. Irritated, Lucy orders the troublemaker to stop talking nonsense and returns to talking to her friend, asking him to meet her at Charlie's house so they can study together. Tom agrees to the study session, and after saying goodbye to his friend, he heads home, where he lives with his grandmother, Nancy. Trying to interact with her grandson, the elderly woman begins to recite a part of the novel she is writing, but this only irritates the young man, causing him to leave the apartment to meet Lucy. However, as soon as he arrives at the location, Tom sees the body of an unconscious man lying on the floor, and soon after, a group of criminals emerges from one of the rooms, where they appear to be recording one of their victims. In a panic, the young man tries to run away, but ends up being shot by one of the criminals, who flee the scene before the authorities arrive. 10 days later, Tom wakes up on a hospital bed next to his grandmother, and when he meets with his doctor, he reveals that the criminal's shot ended up hitting his phone. As a result, the young man had his head pierced in several places by fragments of the device, but luckily, the objects did not damage any vital areas of his brain. Despite this relief, the doctor asks Tom to keep an eye on his symptoms from now on and to let him know if he feels anything strange. Concerned, the young man asks about Lucy's whereabouts, but his grandmother says that the girl is already fine and was discharged some time ago. After that, Tom and Nancy get into a taxi to go home, and when she notices that the driver is staring at her grandson during the trip, the elderly woman begins to confront him. In the middle of the argument, the young man looks at the meter and feels a strange sensation, but before he can figure out what it is, he ends up losing consciousness and waking up in his bed. Confused, Tom meets Nancy for breakfast, and upon noticing that her grandson's scar is already much better, the elderly woman is relieved. Soon after, the grandmother suggests that the young man visit Lucy, and although reluctant, he follows her advice. So Tom takes a bouquet of flowers to his friend's apartment, and after greeting Ben, the young woman's older brother, he heads to her room. Feeling guilty about what happened, the young man apologizes for running away during the attack, but Lucy tells him that it's okay and assures him that she won't blame him for not being a hero, because there was nothing they could have done. Later, the young man is leaving the apartment, but at that moment, he realizes that he can hear the sounds of all the electronic devices around him, as well as the voices of people talking on their phones. This auditory chaos makes Tom nauseous, and he quickly returns to his apartment, where he notices that he is seeing a kind of technological interface on all types of devices in the city. Thanks to this enormous amount of information, the young man ends up losing consciousness, and suddenly, he sees the information on Eugene's cell phone and realizes that the bully was one of the criminals who attacked Lucy that night. However, when he tells Danny everything, the young man doesn't believe his friend, and Tom heads to school, where he continues to see the technological interface everywhere. At that moment, the young man looks at Eugene's cell phone and realizes that the man is sending the recording of what was done to Lucy to one of his colleagues, revealing that he was indeed one of the criminals. Furious to discover that his vision was correct, Tom decides to take revenge and uses his ability to destroy his enemy's cell phone. Later, the young man goes to a party with his friend Danny, and after sitting on a sofa in the middle of the room, he begins to observe everyone around him, managing to find each of the gang members who attacked Lucy. Feeling furious that these criminals had done all that, Tom silently approaches Eugene, and this attitude angers the young man, forcing Danny to take his friend away from there. After that, the young man decides to go to Lucy's apartment, and while they talk outside, he sees Eugene and his troublemaking friends heading to the basketball court. Noticing his friend's reaction when she sees the group again, Tom decides to begin his revenge, and after sending a message to intimidate Eugene, he sets out to silently pursue his enemies the next morning. Noticing that the criminals are about to meet with an illegal dealer, the young man hides and hacks Eugene's cell phone, allowing him to listen to the conversation from a distance. With his hack complete, Tom leaves the scene and spends the rest of the day tormenting the young criminals from his room, causing interference with their lights and electronic devices. Minutes later, the mutant boy decides to send a message to Lucy from a hidden number, saying he will protect her from those who have hurt her. The next day, the school principal gathers his students for an announcement about some academic changes, and Tom takes advantage of the moment to leak the intimate video of Cass, one of the gang members. This causes all the students to start laughing uncontrollably, causing the troublemaker to leave in embarrassment. Excited by what he has done, Tom tells Lucy about what happened, and she is curious to know who was responsible. The young man then goes to put a song on the radio, and the girl decides to send messages to the stranger she had talked to the night before, asking if he was responsible for it. Trying not to arouse suspicion, Tom replies to the messages while fiddling with the radio and asks why his friend was attacked. Lucy replies that her brother had been invited to join Eugene's gang, and when he refused the invitation, the criminals decided to attack one of her family members. After that, the girl asks the name of her unknown protector, and he says that from now on, she can call him iBoy. Days later, the pair walk together toward Lucy's apartment at night when they are intercepted by Eugene and his gang, who begin to make fun of the girl for the attack she suffered. Wanting to know who is responsible for the messages, the leader of the thugs grabs Tom, ordering him to admit that he is the one sending those taunts, but at that moment, they receive another mysterious text message. Upon reading the warning that this is the wrong guy, Eugene becomes confused and yells angrily as the pair run away. Realizing that the criminals are frightening Lucy with everything they have done, Tom becomes thoughtful and decides to take even greater revenge. So, the young man waits until Eugene and his group try to steal one of the vehicles in the area, and locks the criminals inside the car, causing them to despair. Tom then turns on the dashboard radio and uses a voice modifier to talk to them, telling them he knows everything they've done. To make them despair, the mutant causes the vehicle's engine to start boiling and asks who ordered them to carry out the attack. The boys refuse to answer his questions, but as soon as the hood catches fire, Cass starts screaming and reveals that the leader of the group is none other than Cuts, the criminal they had encountered some time ago. With this information obtained, Tom unlocks the doors, allowing the delinquents to escape seconds before the vehicle explodes, as his revenge is just beginning. Now that he has the boss's name, the mutant searches his hacker interface and manages to discover the exact location of the gangster's apartment. What Tom doesn't realize is that Danny is part of the man's criminal organization, who smokes and chats calmly with his henchmen. At that moment, the television shows a recording of Cuts' vehicle, and to irritate the criminals, Tom relieves himself inside the car. Furious, the boss rushes to capture the intruder with his companions, and Tom takes the opportunity to infiltrate the apartment, where he destroys all the electronic devices around the place, in addition to stealing the illegal substances that the men kept in their safe. Upon returning and finding his residence completely destroyed, Cuts is furious and realizes that even his merchandise is no longer there. Sometime later, Lucy talks to Tom in the living room of her apartment and reveals that she is planning to return to class this week, as she is feeling a little better. However, the young woman asks her friend to accompany her during this time, and without thinking twice, the young man accepts the invitation. In addition, the pair talk about iBoy, the city's new vigilante, who has been gaining more and more fame after his attacks on London gangs. Excited, Tom asks his friend's opinion on the matter, but Lucy says that the vigilante must be just a man, since if he really wants to change the situation in the region, he will have to do much more than that. This statement leaves the young man thoughtful, and from then on, Tom begins to act in a much more tactical and aggressive manner, planting packages of illegal substances in the homes of criminals around the neighborhood. Soon after, the mutant hacker calls on the authorities to conduct a sweep of the residential buildings, resulting in several illegal dealers finally being arrested by the police. At the same time, Cuts loses all the money he had in his bank account, and with all this happening, Tom decides to publish part of his actions on the internet, making the name iBoy increasingly famous. Finally, Eugene and his gang are also caught and captured by the authorities, and are detained while all the neighborhood residents reprimand them for everything they have caused. With all this power in his hands, Tom begins to change his behavior and even manages to shut down the power to part of the city as if it were nothing. Days later, Cuts talks to his superior Elman, and the criminal boss tells him that his subordinate will not remain alive if he continues to cause him losses. Feeling intimidated, Cuts promises that he will solve those problems, and during the call, Tom listens to everything with his powers, allowing him to discover the name of the gang leader. In order to find the person responsible for the complaints, the criminal makes a drastic decision and orders his henchmen to steal all cell phones and other electronic devices from the apartments in the neighborhood. The criminals begin to invade all the locations around the area, and the next day, while using his powers to perform one of his tests, Tom sees hundreds of complaints from the population. Realizing that the inhabitants of London are suffering from numerous robberies and attacks because of him, and that even his grandmother has lost some of her belongings, the young man decides to wait a few days, causing the criminals to resume their illegal activities. Now that his enemies have let their guard down once again, Tom sets out to continue disrupting their schemes, and believing that her grandson may be involved in bad things, Nancy goes to talk to Danny. The elderly woman explains that although she knows Tom is different, she believes he is still a good boy, and asks the young man to keep an eye on him so he can stop him if he tries to do something stupid. At the same time, nearby, Cuts walks to his vehicle, being watched by iBoy, who sends a message to Lucy, saying he will end all this once and for all. However, the young woman replies that the hacker shouldn't do that, and orders him to stop all those attacks, since he is doing it to satisfy himself. This statement leaves the young man thoughtful, but he does not give up and follows Cuts' car, using his powers to track it through his cell phone. The problem is that, in order not to be followed, the criminal left the device in a trash can, allowing him to lose Tom. At that moment, the young man hears helicopters flying over the area, as a major accident has occurred nearby. Without wasting any time, Tom tracks Cuts' car through the aircraft's view and sets off on his bike to continue his mission. The criminal then arrives at a place full of containers and goes to talk to his henchmen, who are trying to find a way to deal with iBoy. Meanwhile, Tom approaches through the shadows, and using his powers to perform quick analyses, he manages to plan a perfect combo of attacks against one of the guards, who is easily knocked out. Soon after, the young man walks over to the crate containing the shipment of illegal substances and sets it on fire so that the criminals lose their money once again. However, before he can leave, Tom is surprised by Cuts, who starts beating him up along with his gang. Amidst all those punches and kicks, the young man realizes that he is about to be finished off, and to escape, he creates a powerful wave of high-pitched noises that stuns all the criminals around him. Thanks to this, Tom manages to get away and escape the scene without even being hit by Cuts' shots, who screams in pain desperately. Despite his escape, the mutant hacker is still extremely injured, and while trying to walk home, he ends up colliding with one of the lampposts, knocking himself unconscious with the impact. The next day, Tom wakes up in an unknown place, with no idea how he got there. At home, Lucy calls her friend repeatedly, waiting for him to accompany her to school, but when she realizes he won't answer, she gives up and goes to school alone. After the exam, the girl meets Tom at the apartment building and scolds him for lying about accompanying her. Trying to calm his friend down, the young man explains that he had some problems last night, but Lucy doesn't want to listen to him and walks away. At that moment, the young people notice that all the residents are looking in the direction of the building, and when they turn around, they come across Cass's body, who appears to have taken his own life with a noose. This scene shocks Tom, and later, he talks to Danny on the building's terrace. During the conversation, the hacker asks who could have been responsible for Cass's perishment, and without thinking twice, Danny says that iBoy is to blame for it, since he was the one who started all that chaos. This answer disappoints Tom, and later, the young man notices that the region's inhabitants are beginning to have divided opinions about iBoy's goodness. Due to the high level of psychological pressure, the young man begins to feel ill and tries to convince his doctor to perform surgery to remove the fragments from his brain. However, the doctor explains that this is not possible, and disappointed, the young man decides to leave. During the night, Tom hears something strange coming from the front door of his apartment, and when he approaches to check what it was, he ends up being held up by one of Cuts' henchmen, who appears with another man. Confused, the young man asks what they are doing, and the criminal reveals himself to be none other than Elman, the big boss of that criminal organization. Outraged by what is happening, Nancy rebukes the man for his cowardice, but Cuts attacks her, and with the elderly woman unconscious, Elman orders him to take her to one of the rooms. Soon after, the man explains that he already knows about Tom's superpowers and tells him that he will give him a chance to change his life if he agrees to work alongside him. Despite the intimidation, the young hacker refuses to do so, and realizing that he will have to resort to Plan B, Elman knocks the young man to the ground. With his target subdued, the criminal asks him to track down Lucy, and in doing so, Tom discovers that the girl has been captured by Eugene and his companions, who were released from prison thanks to his boss's influence. Realizing that his friend is about to be eliminated by the group of delinquents, the young man concludes that there is nothing else he can do and agrees to help Elman. To further shake the young man's psyche, the criminal reveals that he discovered his identity thanks to Danny, who pointed him out as the prime suspect of being the real iBoy. The man then humiliates his henchman in front of everyone, and after sending him away with his payment, he orders the mutant hacker to transfer a huge amount of money to his bank account, otherwise Lucy will be eliminated. Tom begins the transfer and, at the same time, uses some of his powers to call the authorities on the phone that is filming Lucy. In the warehouse, Eugene and his companions prepare the gun to shoot their victim if the deal is not made, and outraged at being about to be eliminated by the same boys she grew up with for so many years. The young woman starts screaming at them. Furious, Eugene tries to intimidate the girl, but at that moment, the authorities arrive on the scene, and after destroying the cell phone, the henchmen run to hide with their captured victim. Despite trying to make noise so that the police can hear her, Lucy has her mouth covered and is unable to get the office's attention. Feeling that the device has been broken, Tom has a slight spasm in his body, and realizing that something is happening in the warehouse, Elman decides to head towards the location with the young man. Amid all the chaos, Eugene ends up dropping his gun on the floor, but he remains still, and after a few seconds, the authorities leave. Relieved, the criminals celebrate that they are still okay, and taking advantage of the distraction, Lucy picks up the gun from the floor and subdues the trio. In order to take revenge for everything they have done, Lucy yells and scolds the criminals for their actions, and orders them to kneel so she can finish them off. However, the young woman is unable to pull the trigger, and tired of going through all this, she runs outside, where she is surprised by Elman and his henchmen. Realizing that she has no way to react, the girl remains still and is disarmed by Eugene, while one of the criminals hits Tom in the head with his gun. With order restored, Elman orders Tom to continue the transaction, but the young man decides that he will no longer continue with it all and focuses his power on everyone's cell phones. Noticing that something is about to happen, Elman throws his phone away, but the other criminals don't have time to react and end up being severely injured by their devices, which explode in their pockets. Taking advantage of the distraction, Lucy strikes Eugene with a fighting maneuver, and now that they are free, Tom runs to confront the criminal. Outside, Elman surprises his enemy with a blow from an iron bar and begins to beat him while making various statements to humiliate him. Trying to defend himself, Tom uses his high-pitched pulse again, but the man manages to resist and headbutts the young man, who falls to the ground unconscious. To finish him off, Elman picks up the iron bar, and after approaching, he prepares to crush his enemy's head. At that moment, Lucy appears, firing a warning shot at the criminal and shouting for him to get away from the young man immediately. Elman then walks toward the girl, and when she notices that her gun has jammed, she becomes desperate. However, before she is attacked, Lucy manages to hit the criminal with a shot to his arm, and furious, the man hits his opponent with a powerful punch, causing her to fall unconscious to the ground. At the same time, Tom wakes up, and upon witnessing that scene, he enters a state of rage and gets up. Wanting to end it all, Elman walks toward the young man with his iron bar, but before he can attack, Tom lets out a powerful scream, generating a shockwave that eliminates his enemy in an instant. After that, the young man's energy is depleted, and unable to continue, he falls to the ground. Sometime later, Tom wakes up on a hospital bed next to his grandmother, who is excited to see that the young man is finally back. Nancy and her grandson have lunch together in her apartment, and minutes later, while walking around the neighborhood, Tom runs into Danny, who apologizes for the mistake he made. In addition, the young man says he knows his actions were not fair and offers the money Elman had given him. However, Tom does not accept the money and reveals that after hunting down all the criminals who had recorded Lucy's attack, he had never wondered who was filming the situation. Upon hearing this, Danny remains silent and wishes the hacker good luck in finding the person responsible. Finally, Tom meets Lucy on the building's terrace, and after preparing a romantic dinner on a small table on the floor, the couple kiss, feeling relieved that they not only survived the attack, but also eliminated London's biggest organized crime boss. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.